Hello, welcome to the 19th day of January 2021. I'm Kurt, and this is my Good Life Meditation. I do this every day, every morning, first thing I do when I get up to remind myself of my objectives and principles and to see how I did yesterday, last night, and to plan for the coming day. First, yesterday and last night, I started off the day I really finished off a long weekend in kind of low spirits yesterday. Mildly depressed actually. Not serious, but just like, just kind of that funk that hangs over you sometime. And that was probably because I failed to go to Siberia on Friday. And I was I felt like my plans were foiled by myself yet again. And it was that kind of set me off course for the entire long weekend. But I carried on and did my duty, cleaned the house, attended to the shopping that I needed to do, attended to my family commitments and responsibilities, and I did so with a fairly straightforward and cheerful and not false, demeanor. Yumiko was on to me, and she asked how I was doing and wished me well. She's very sensitive to how I've been with a woman for 35 years. Yeah, our 30th wedding anniversary is coming up, so she knows me. But nothing extreme. It's just routine stuff. I mean, the routine. I mean, if I was to use the Anchorhold, that one of my principles, the idea of sitting on a rock with inlets to the sea, I would simply describe this last weekend as the tide was high. Not even close, but high enough. And when the tide's high, you feel a little anxious because that water is scary and cold and deep. So I knew that getting back to work would change things because a productive day at work does wonders to my spirit, and it did. Almost within 15 minutes, half an hour of starting my day, I narrowed in. I aimed at the course for the day, which was I wanted to develop a presentation for the training course that I'm making. I'd already written the training manual. Now I wanted to write the presentation for the first lesson, and I did. I also wrote a presentation for something else for the unit that I work for, and I succeeded at that too. Both of them took a lot of time. Well, I haven't written a good PowerPoint training presentation for a couple of years. So I felt very good by the end of the day. Had a nice evening with the family. I was utterly exhausted. I was like on my way to bed like by 8:15, and I was asleep. So I had a really good night's sleep too, just completely out, except for I could hear. I woke up in the middle of the night with Emily making some noise, but other than that, I was just a rock. I was asleep of a rock right until the alarm went off. And usually when the alarm goes off, I immediately wake up and I grab the alarm. It was like from a distance, I could hear the alarm going off deep, far away. Had to bring me back. That usually bodes well for the coming day if I have a really good night's sleep, a full night's sleep, and I did. So I should be good today, but I'm still tired. Let's do my good life meditation. First, my 7 objectives. Number 1 is to be always ready to die. Number 2 is to make good use of the time that I have. Number 3 is to develop good and sound life principles, exactly the ones I'm reciting now. Next is to cultivate good emotional reactions. Next is to perform good actions. Then to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities. And then my last objective is to just do one thing at a time and to do that thing slowly. The objectives are the things that I'm striving towards, the way that I want to be and behave. Next, let's go over my 30 principles. Number 1 is the principle of war, to always be fighting against whatever I hold to be true. 2 is the principle of reason and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt. To use reason as the instrument in the aforementioned war. Number 3 is the homunculus, the reminder that consciousness is just something that is a result of my brain activity and brain chemistry, and the supporting infrastructure of my body, and that when I die, this consciousness, this thing that I perceive to be me, will wink out like a snuffed out candle and will be no more. Next is the Anchorhold. As I mentioned before, the Anchorhold suggests a little rock sticking out of the sea on which each of us stands on our own rock. And the sea rises and falls, and the storms come, and the sun and the moon. And that's how we live out our lives. The key element there is that we can shout across the waves to one another and semaphore with our arms, but ultimately we are alone. We live and die in solitude upon our Anchorhold. Next is the home of good and evil. Right and wrong are opinions that we hold in our mind based on the experience of our lives, which become, in a sense, objective when we can demonstrate their truth and then come to some agreement among one another. But ultimately, they boil down to a subjective experience of the world, which is never complete or final, and thus should be tentatively held, hearkening back to the aforementioned war. Next comes the principle of purpose, and the three sub-principles of biology, virtue, and mission. My purpose is first and foremost to continue and complete my role as a father, and in that capacity as a husband, and as a son and a brother, and to a degree as well as a friend, so that I can help to rear my child into adulthood. It's strictly a biological mission, with more emphasis on those creatures that are more closely related to me. Like I said, strictly biological, part of the mandate of what we are. The reason that we are, because we have that mandate. But I also have a mission that I'm trying to fulfill, which is to live a virtuous life and to share the good things that I've learned along the way that seem to work, which are precisely these objectives and principles, and the sharing is precisely what I'm doing now. Next comes the atomic principle. Everything in the universe is made of bits and pieces, including you and me, and we are temporary, ephemeral, and short existing. Next is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that is. I find this really helpful at work, especially where I recognize the nature of the organization that I work at, the coworkers that I spend my time with, and the objectives that we seek to fulfill. It helps me to align and to be in accord with that. And in some cases work my way around things. The next principle is the pirate ride. The suggestion that free will is an illusion. A very, very compelling illusion, where we think that we're making the choices that we do. And in fact, we are, yet the clincher is that we could never have made any choice other than the one we did, although we're free to select any choice we want. It's a puzzle. Yet my instinct tells me that that one is correct. I can't say my reason, because my reason can't wrap itself around this, but I'm viscerally convinced, which I know is not the type of conviction that we should rest our hat on. Yet I do. And I'll claim my faith, my right to faith. It's a matter of faith. So there. I should be slapped. Next comes maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. We are mature when we remember our experiences and we have the strength to avoid the repeating of our mistakes and the strength and courage to carry on with what we think is correct, a correct course of action. Always tentative to change our minds should reality prove us false. So the next principle is called the social principle. We are social creatures, you and I, and we need each other. So I recommend avoiding sequestering ourselves away. I could heed that advice a little better myself. The next principle is public speaking, a reminder to use few words, carefully chosen words, and deliberate words, and to never gossip. Then comes temperance, and the sub-principles of of suffering, simplicity, and doubt. We are temperate. We live a controlled life. When we live a simple life, we suffer because we deny ourselves what we want. So a temperate life is, almost by definition, does involve a little bit of suffering. And it requires some apathy to apply temperance in an effective way. Effective insofar as we're not dwelling on that which we recognize is outside of our control, but accept it. I wonder if I should move apathy around to make it a sub-principle of true limits. That might be better. Because it really isn't a matter of temperance that we're not apathetic toward the things that we resist. We're apathetic, or that we reject. We are apathetic towards the things. No, it is temperance, because true limits are the things that are outside of our control. Well, no, that's what it is. We're apathetic towards the things that were outside of our control, that are beyond us. That belongs with true limits and true opportunity. Gosh darn it, I gotta move that. Let me make a note. Move apathy to true limits and true op. Okay, the next principle is called, hold on, one thing slowly. There we go. Now I can get back to it. Next is the principle called the horror show, which is a recognition that life is chock full of terrible things. And I need to remember that so that I can live a more sober life. Sober in terms of my attitude, not necessarily a consumption of alcohol. Now, next comes public speaking. No. That which must be borne is the next principle. Simply recognizing that there are things in life that we have to bear as a result of our biology, our fate. I don't like using that word. What would it be better? The deterministic nature of the universe. Fate sounds like it's a plan. Deterministic sounds like it's cause and effect. And our responsibilities. For example, as if we choose to become parents, there are certain responsibilities that we must fulfill, namely providing for our family and keeping them safe. And we have to bear certain difficulties. For example, a difficult job, or the challenge of not having much free time because you've decided to give your life over to children, or less free time, a lot less. These are the things that we must bear. We must also bear the consequence of the horror show, the fact of the horror show, etc., etc. And I have a sub-principle there, which is called the hand on the tiller, remembering to keep our hand on the tiller of the ship, steering towards the evening star, or wherever we're steering, through the clouds. Maybe sometimes into and through the clouds. Next is the Feast of Offal, a reminder that sometimes we've had enough and we spill out our upset into the world, and to try to remind myself not to do that. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for others, and it's certainly not healthy for the person that does it. It's almost like that, the principle of that which must be born should be after that one. I'll think about that. Next comes two principles, distraction, and then another principle called agency and the great indifference. We live our lives distracting ourselves through work and play and hobbies and friendships and gossip, etc., so that we don't have to see the fact that the universe appears to be empty, which becomes apparent when we stop the distraction. So a lot of us don't want to see that because it's pretty awful to apprehend, and then we discover we're left on our own to figure it out. Next comes, I feel like I'm missing something. Next comes the best seat in the house. To not want to be anyone else, be anywhere else, or be doing anything else, but to be okay with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing. Next comes the Path of Wildness, my first principle, the first one I ever came up with. This idea is that sometimes we need to move on, or we want to consider maybe moving on. And at that point, the process is to collect facts about the option, to give ourselves some time to consider and think, and then to make a choice. And when the time comes to choose, if we still don't have enough information, then give ourselves more information. Repeat the process a couple of times until we're satisfied we can make an informed decision. And then yet, if we still aren't quite sure, maybe instead of trying again to get more information, because that process can be a long process sometimes, maybe it's better to just kind of go with our gut. What was our first inclination? What was it that we really thought we wanted to do, which is usually to go for it. And that might be the thing that pushes us over the edge, that launches us forth a new inertia into a new life. There's no guarantee that that's the right choice. It may be a very terrible, awful choice, but at least we're moving forward. Enough with the vacillation. Next comes the risk of avoiding risk. Life has surface level risks, all the safe and sane stuff, education, marriage, job, family, and then the deep risk. The deep risk is not spending time on ourselves to discover what it is that we want to make of this world, this singularly unique little thing that we might want to do. That's us, that represents us, that we can leave behind as our record of having existed. Something more than beloved father, husband, son, mother, sister, wife. I kind of like the way that came out. More compact, a more tighter description of that principle, if not a little more vague. Next comes sin and damnation. And there are 7 sub-principles, 7 sins, basically. These are falsity, not being true, credulity, an over-eagerness to believe, Hope, which is desire uncoupled from motive force, from action. Faith, where belief is sustained as the evidence for belief. What a little circular little bit of silliness. Superstition, a category of belief that is almost defined into silliness. Authority, belief because the person who's proposing the belief occupies what appears to be an office of some sort of some stature, and they must be right. Dogma, belief because the thing that's proposed is well bound in leather with a beautiful font and careful, what would they call it back in the Middle Ages? Illumination, illustrations. And then gossip, which is a sin for its own sake. Next comes the other dog's having a dream. Next comes complete oblivion, and the sub-principles of no reunion, no reconciliation, and no final reunion, no final reconciliation, and no justice. No final justice. Because when we die, this homunculus, this consciousness will wink out. Our atoms will dissolve away or be burned up, or however our body becomes dust again. And we won't see anybody ever again. We're not going to see our loved ones in some heaven. Those who have died before us will never see them, nor will the ones who are left behind ever see us again. We'll have no chance to reconcile any past differences or execute any justice, because there's no place to have the justice, and there's no final justice giver. A universe without God, a universe without souls, a universe without any afterlife, a universe of just this here and now, distilled down to the moments that are ticking away, tick, 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 in this very moment. Not a lot, is there? Next is the Great Life Adventure, a suggestion to give ourselves the time and the space to have one or more big adventures to call our own, which will help to define who we are and give us the story that becomes the story of our lives. Next comes the Season of Philosophy, which is a time to record what we've learned along the way, what's been important to us, to get it down to share with those who will come be after us. After the Season of Philosophy comes the Bullseye Aim, reminder that we strive towards the mark, but we usually miss. So don't feel too bad when you miss. It's quite normal and satisfactory. The Uphill Climb is the next one. Life is a steady uphill climb. And the higher we go, the more expansive the vista. But don't forget to turn around and look from time to time. And don't forget to climb. Although some people seem quite happy to stop somewhere along the journey and just dig in. So I guess there's that. Next comes arena and utility. Life is like a gladiatorial arena where we struggle and work and fight, using our objectives and principles as the tools. Dare I say, weapons of that endeavor. Next comes nothing is enough. A reminder, kind of hearkening back to Temperance, that of simplicity, that a life with little is sometimes yielding of so much more. And then lastly, the principle of fun, a reminder to have a good time, to not take all this stuff too seriously, but to give ourselves a chance to enjoy. Okay, that's it. That's my good life objectives and principles. Now, let's plan for the current day. It's another day of work. It's a Wednesday. I completed my first lesson preparation yesterday. As I mentioned before, my first presentation it's a PowerPoint presentation for my lesson and lesson 1 of 4. And so the first thing I'm going to do when I start work is I'm going to make an attempt to record that lesson, literally make a recording of it using some technology that I have. Namely, I'm going to try out something that I've got from work, but I might also try out using StreamYard. It's pretty good technology in that regard, although sometimes the recording quality kind of sucks. Anyhow, I'll try that because I have a 10 o'clock meeting with the team that I'd like to go over with them. And then I'll go over the usual agenda with the team and carry on. We only have 4 weeks now before we actually begin training our first lesson. So got to keep things moving forward. I don't anticipate getting in any issues today. It's a good solid day of work. I have a good head of steam on me now. It should be a good day. Of course, I'll get ambushed by stuff, but less and less now, especially now that I'm here. Oh, lastly, one thing I did notice, I wanted to just point out. I've noticed that since I'm living here at home and working here at home and not getting out very much, I'm becoming weak. My body's becoming frailer. My instincts are dulling. And most notably, for example, when I go out, I'm a little more dangerous when I drive. I'm a little more unpracticed when I go into public. I'm far more dangerous when I'm riding my motorcycle. And I was talking to my wife, Yumiko, about this, how this is how things must come to an end. For example, once we retire and we stop going out, engaging into society, our faculties start to diminish. Like, for example, I haven't been swimming. Ever since I moved into our first apartment in Irvine, we've always had a beautiful swimming pool, and it's been my practice to go out and swim every day, and just simply 8 laps every day. It's not very much. And as a result, I had a very fit upper body, especially because I mostly power with my arms. I'm not much a kicker, but I'm pretty good on the lower because I get a lot of walking too. I don't have a pool anymore. I don't swim. The whole thing's starting to sag away the upper body. Doing better on the lower body because I walk a lot more, and especially I climb now. I climb mountains, so I'm still healthy, but I'm getting weak and flabby and frail. And the observation is the same thing goes on here. So I really it's good to know. I have to think about this, and maybe try to find some way to address this, to get out more, maybe, and also to prepare myself for the coming retirement, where I think I am a person who could easily go down quick if I don't retire carefully. Right, that's it for today. Wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe.